everyone. Today in Mark chapter 10, verse 35 to 45, we learn about two disciples that wanted to become very powerful and wanted a place of honor next to Jesus. You see, Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem, and this is towards the end of his ministry, but James and John had a plan. They were very smart, and they really wanted to make sure that they would get their right seat next to Jesus when he becomes what they thought would be very powerful. Well, they asked Jesus, please grant us whatever we wish. And they're treating Jesus almost like he's a genie in a bottle. And Jesus says, okay, what would you like? And they say, please grant us a place on your right and on your left. Well, this is kind of interesting that they would ask Jesus to grant this wish before even telling Jesus what they wanted. I remember when my son was around 2 or 3 years old, he was really difficult. And anytime we would go to the mall or, a place with toys, he would just say yes, say yes. And I would say, for what? And he would say, no, just say yes, just say yes. And I would say, no, you have to tell me what you want first, and then I'll decide whether it's yes or no. And then he'll be like, oh, I want a toy. And then I'll be like, no, you can get the toy. And then he would throw a tantrum. He's come a long way since then. Now he's almost like a third parent to our daughters. But when he was younger, he was very demanding, and he really wanted whatever he wanted. James and John are very similar. They have their eyes set on becoming very powerful and sitting in places of honor next to Jesus. You see, they think Jesus is going to be a powerful king. He's going to overthrow the Romans, and everything is going to be put back to their rightful place. And who better to sit next to Jesus as the right and left-hand men than James and John? See, back then in the ancient world, powerful kings usually had advisors and people to sit next to them, and they were like the hands and feet of the king. And wherever they went in the kingdom, people would bow down to them, and they were like representatives of the king. And that's what James and John wanted to be. Well, Jesus responds and says, are you able to drink the cup that I am able to drink and be baptized with the baptism that I'm about to take? And they said, yes, we can. But they really don't understand what Jesus means. Jesus is going to enter Jerusalem soon, and he's going to be crucified on the cross. So this is so different than what they think. They really don't understand what God is doing at this moment. You see, God did not call Jesus to become this great ruler and powerful king. Yes, Jesus is the King of all kings, and Jesus is God himself. But the way that Jesus shows God's heart is not by becoming a powerful person that, forces people to do whatever he wants. Jesus ends up dying on the cross, giving and sacrificing his whole life so that we can have a relationship with God. And then Jesus is the prime example, the main example we have of what it means to follow God, what it means to be a disciple. We have to look at the life of Jesus. See, James and John, eventually, they know what that looks like, because later on, James is one of the first martyrs of the early church. King Herod, puts James to the sword. And then John ends up being exiled into the island of Patmos. And he writes this book because he sees these visions, and he writes this book called Revelations. And that's in our Bible today. See, later on, James and John, they fully understand what Jesus meant, the sacrifices that would need to be made, the fact that they had to give their lives to serve God's kingdom. That's really what God's kingdom is like. It's giving of our lives. See, when God looks around to see who God can use as instruments for God's kingdom, it's not people who are wanting, success and power and wealth. It's not those kinds of people that God is able to use. It's people that have lived a life of service, people that are giving of themselves and are willing to tell God, here are my gifts, use me for your work. And it's through that we could be a part of what God is doing. So I hope all of us can see Jesus as a prime example of what it means to be a disciple and to live a life where we give of ourselves, give of our times, give of our talents to serve God and others. Amen.